And Mark, let's close out the podcast talking. We're still keeping the quarterback theme going, but now we're looking at some draft quarterbacks, and it's nice not to talk about Dwayne Haskins and Kyler Murray all the freaking time, but I am going to ask you...
There's got to be somebody at some point.
I am going to ask you a Kyler Murray one to start this, but before I do, make sure to check us out on Twitter at the Mark Weber, at Ricky Widmer, and the Most Valuable Podcast is at Most Valuable Pod. But Mark, before we get into Drew Lock, Daniel Jones, we were talking about something before we hit the record button.
Yep.
And I just want to get your thought process here on the mics for everyone. We were kind of talking about Kyler Murray's interview on the Dan Patrick Show.
And how terrible and awkward it was.
Yeah, how bad was it? And does he, will he get will this show him, hey, I need an NFL agent?
It should, but the thing is, what agent really wants him? Mm-hmm. Because if I'm an agent, there's no way I'm going to waste my time on you if you can't tell me you're actually going to play football.
Exactly. Why should I waste my time and energy when I have other clients?
And watching this, too, it was one of those things where if you're a GM, you can't draft him. Mm-hmm. You cannot. If we were doing a mock draft right now, he would not be in my first round because of this interview. And that's not an overreaction.
I have kept him out because he hasn't committed.
Yeah, I've put him in there because, I don't know, I mean, he's there.
He's there.
He's there. He's one of the better quarterbacks in the draft if he goes. But it's just simply if you're watching this, he can't say yes or no to baseball or football. Mm-hmm. And he just stammers. He can't even think of something clever to say, which he doesn't have to be funny and clever. But if you can't think of anything to say, what are you going to do when that defensive lineman is coming in your face? Mm-hmm. Are you going to be able to think fast, or are you going to sit there and just stare at Dan Patrick?
Well, we know football-wise he's very quick on his feet. But, the thing is, that's the big thing that blew me away is you don't have some sort of
canned response?
Even if it's a BS answer that we all go he's just dodging the question, at least you have something prepared.
Yeah.
It's it reminds me of when in college they were preparing you for job interviews. Mm-hmm. And I remember one of my teachers said, I can't remember what question it was, but it was this. It's they will ask you a stupid question what's the last book you read? Just to see if you can talk. Tell me about this random thing that has nothing to do.
Which, to be fair, I've been on a lot of job interviews. Never once have been asked a question.
I have gotten that question.
Never
quite a bit. What's the last book you read? Or something totally non-related to the job, just to see.
Weirdest
if
question
you're
I was ever asked was if I like dogs, but that was because there are dogs in the office. Mm-hmm. But for this, it's just you had to have something prepared. Mm-hmm. I mean, he wasn't even willing to say, yes, he's going to report to spring training.
Yeah.
And there's a team out there that drafted you that's sitting there going, you better report to spring training.
Oh, you're going to spring training? He goes, it's wait, you are going to spring training. I'm and that's where I was double hands. I'm oh my God, the A's are not going to give you money now. They're not going to up their deal now because you're not committing to them now. So I just want to ask you that.
Just make up your mind, kid. That's all it comes down to.
I think you should go play baseball, but that's just me. The quarterbacks we are talking about today are Daniel Jones and Drew Lock. And the thing I wanted to ask you is, so both of them played in the Senior Bowl. Depending on who you ask and who you read, they either did good to help their draft stock, they either did bad to not help their draft stock. And I believe it was Daniel Jones was the MVP of the Senior Bowl 2 weeks ago. Both of them, through NFL analysts or draft analysts, have received first-round grades. I want to ask you, though, will Daniel Jones or Drew Lock be first-round picks this April?
Daniel Jones from Duke, I'm going to say no. I don't think he will. Drew Lock has the potential to be a first-round pick. Mm-hmm. And part of it depends on Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray is there in the draft, and somebody drafts him. Obviously, Drew Lock probably is not going to go. Mm-hmm. Because we just talked about it in the last two segments. You've got Ryan Tannehill, Joe Flacco, Nick Foles, and there's 4 teams that need quarterbacks, maybe a 5th team, depending on how you want to look at it. So if 2 or 3 of those are starting quarterbacks, all right, that leaves us with 1 or 2 spots. Drew Lock, to me, is a guy who The combine and his pro day
will help him immensely.
If he does well, yes. Because he's a gunslinger quarterback. We've seen recently some gunslinger quarterbacks like Josh Allen, like Patrick Mahomes, that we've really liked. And we've thought, that looks pretty nice. It's been successful. I mean, we just had one who was the MVP of the league. Recency bias is going to set in for some of these. That's why everybody's trying to get somebody who's looked at Sean McVay before to coach their team. You're going to say, I want Patrick Mahomes. So I'm going to go find a guy who maybe has some of the things Patrick Mahomes has. In this case, strong arm, kind of athletic, gunslinger. And that's what Drew Lock can have. Does he have issues like footwork? Yes. Does he have accuracy issues sometimes? Yeah, he does. But that's okay. Some of these teams, if he can go out there and sling it, and he can improve a little bit of that accuracy and not miss too much in the combine and his pro day, he's a guy who can really kind of step his game up. And you look at some of those people who had that old line of thought, like a John Elway. The guy's a good size of a quarterback, right? He is the size of a quarterback that you want.
Well, and here's the thing I'm thinking is I like how you bring up John Elway, because as you were kind of talking, as I'm listening to you talk, I've got on my computer just kind of playing is Drew Lock's film. And arguably his best game was the game that Missouri played against the Purdue Boilermakers, where he had 375 yards. He had 4 touchdowns in that game in early September, mid-September. And the thing that's funny of why you say John Elway is when I look at the Draft Network, do you want to take a guess at who his player comparison is? If I said the Broncos.
Well, I think I know who it is. Jay Cutler.
No,
but
even worse than Jay Cutler.
Who's that?
Paxton Lynch.
Oh, I saw Jay Cutler. That's why I said I thought I knew the answer.
I look at that and I go, ugh. Like, now, am I saying like that's 110% correct? No. Drew Lock.
Why is anybody
the guy,
comparing anybody to Paxton Lynch?
And what it is he's a guy where, much like Paxton Lynch, his best trait is his arm strength. He can freaking, like you said, he can freaking sling that deep ball. But his worst trait is his decision making. And for me, the thing I also do not like about him is there are plays like the one that I'm watching now where it's like, okay, the feet look good. You've got the protection. You have it. But there are times where I look at his feet and I go, that's not going to work in the NFL.
Bad footwork.
And his mechanics are not totally there to where I feel like, to me, and I'm talking on Drew Lock and Daniel Jones, I kind of feel like is the same and similar as well, is I feel like teams are going to be like, if you draft him in the first round, he has the potential to be that Paxton Lynch type player. Not saying exactly what Paxton Lynch was.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that first round pick to where it's like, so why isn't he starting? All right, why isn't he playing? Okay, why isn't he developing?
That's
like
why
he
he's the kind of one who can go, like I was saying in the last segment, with Ryan Tannehill, so that way he's got the chance to just sit back and learn. Or a Joe Flacco, sit back and learn for a little bit, let the older guy take care of it. I'm still amazed that anybody would compare him to a quarterback that never played in the NFL.
Yep.
I think that's an unfair comparison.
Well, I think it's more of the comparison I feel is more of like they are similar builds, and it was even though Missouri's in the SEC, it's not one of those top tier teams. Yeah. And plus, Paxton Lynch was a quarterback, big arm, bad decision making.
I just think if you don't play in the NFL, you don't get to be compared.
Which is weird because I liked Paxton Lynch coming out. Like I was like, man, he can develop into something, and then he got to the NFL,
developed into a magician,
and he was like, "Wow, yeah," because he disappeared. And that's the thing where like this is where both of them come in. I still think they're second rounders to me, and the reason why I say that is, I'm going to have an asterisk by it, but I'm going to say second rounders. And the reason why I say that, the Dolphins are too high. I think 13's too high. I think 15's too high.
That's the big issue.
I think 10's too high. The only way I am taking Drew Lock is or Daniel Jones, let's say you fall in love with Daniel Jones and you like it, is if the Patriot pick is coming up at 32 and I can make a trade with them in order to snag him and get that 5th round option. A Lamar Jackson, a Teddy Bridgewater type of deal to where it's like, technically, I think you're a 2nd rounder, but I want to snag you with that 32nd pick to get that 5th round option.
I also think that that's going to be an issue, is that a lot of these quarterback needy teams are too high. But as much as I think the 1st, 2nd, 3rd round pick, like those are picks you're not going to be able to trade because there's so many good talents in this draft. But, you know, like a 13 for the Dolphins, a 10 for the Broncos, a 15 for the Redskins, you can maybe trade back with that one. You know, pick something else up and then go back a little further, get your Daniel Jones or your Drew Lock in the 20s or the 30s, or right above the 30. But the thing, too, for this is even though they get a 1st round grade, there are so many other defensive talents out here that you would probably rather have that, sure, you can be rated as 1st round.
Let's be honest.
That doesn't mean you're not going to get drafted in the 2nd round.
How many 1st round grades have we seen fall to the 2nd round, fall to the 3rd round? And how many 4th round grade guys have we seen? Wow, man, if I was redrafting, I'd take them in the 1st round.
And it's just really,
like, you're telling me Russell Wilson wouldn't be a 1st round pick looking back at it?
Yeah, I mean, he's got a Super Bowl. It just looks to me of, sure, you can be a 1st round talent right now, but it doesn't mean you're being drafted here. There are other guys that teams would rather have, and there's only going to probably be two really quarterback needy teams, and then you're going to have teams like the Saints, like maybe the Patriots. Steelers just kind of drafted someone, but they can maybe do it again. All these teams that need somebody in a year or two don't need them right now, to where maybe that's where Daniel Jones gets picked up in the 2nd or 3rd round, because we could use a guy who can sit and learn for a little bit.
The Patriots, the Steelers are interesting because
they just did that.
No, not just that. They are a team that they traded for Teddy Bridgewater. And if they're going to re-sign him and keep him on, I don't think they
You mean the Saints?
Yeah, the Saints.
Okay, you said the Steelers, I think.
I meant the Saints. So the Saints traded for Teddy Bridgewater. If they re-sign him, they're not going to draft a quarterback in the late 1st round.
Of course, yeah.
The Steelers, though, I would not, because you did it last year. You got Mason Rudolph. Why? Like, and they're a
unless
team,
you just don't like them.
And they're a team too, where it's like you looked at it and it was like, all right, they had Landry Jones, who we thought was going to be the guy, Joshua Dobbs, which we thought, okay, maybe he's going to develop into the guy, and then they go Mason Rudolph. So that's telling me Landry Jones is the one that I think it was like so far away that it was like, all right, we thought Big
sometimes
Ben's
you
window
just
was gone,
draft a quarterback to draft a quarterback.
Where Joshua Dobbs, I thought, all right, maybe they think they're going to develop it. It's like, all right, he's probably gone because they took Mason Rudolph.
Yeah, but sometimes it's too. You just get a quarterback because he's high enough on your board that you say, yeah, we'll take him, we'll develop him. Big Ben could get in a car accident and never play again tomorrow.
True.
You don't really know, or he develops really well, he becomes Jacoby Brissett or Jimmy Garoppolo, and you trade him and get some nice stuff for him.
Now, here's the thing I'm going to ask you, because I'm looking at a scouting report here for Daniel Jones. And in this scouting report, this one is by, I'm going to give credit to Joe Marino. He says, it was disappointing to not see more growth from Jones in year 1 to year 2 as a starter. In 23 more passing attempts as a sophomore, Jones' completion percentage dipped from 62.8 to 56.7 while throwing 2 less touchdowns and 3 more interceptions. His passing yards fell from 236 to 207. If you are an NFL scout, if you are, let's even say an NFL coach, an owner, a GM, anyone in that war room, do you look at that and go, does that speak to what his progression may be? Like, are we going to draft him and it's going to be a struggle to get him to the level we want him
Well,
at?
it might show you that he's already peaked, and it's all downhill from here. And that happens to plenty of quarterbacks, that the best days they have are in college, and then it goes downhill. And you got to do your homework on that. You got to see, okay, well, what about the wide receivers? What are the changes there? What about the offensive line? Are there changes there? Did they place better defenses? You got to do all your homework on this, of course. But it is concerning that you have a guy who goes and declines from year 1 to year 2 because that's all you've got. You've got 1-2 years. And now you're going to draft this guy in the NFL. And you're drafting a guy who I get nervous about him. I mean, he's got some arm strength, but he doesn't have the ability to really make that needle in the haystack kind of throw. You know, what Tom Brady just did with Rob Gronkowski,
that touch
Daniel
finesse
Jones
pass.
will never do that for you. He will never do that. So you sit there and you're like, okay, interesting. He's not going to throw those wide receivers open. He's not going to beat defenses. So there's all these issues there where some of his talent, I mean, there's some nice stuff there, but there's these big glittering red flags that make you say, maybe I'll take somebody else.
And the one I'm looking at, I just paused for a second because as you were saying that, one of those examples kind of comes up where I'll explain it, where it's like 3-step drop and it's like 3-step, I'm looking to throw. He's getting a receiver on a slant over the middle and there's 3 defenders kind of triangling around the receiver. What does he do? He kind of just airmails it right through where it's so quick, it's not directly on the mark, and then it falls incomplete. Where it's funny that you bring up that Tom Brady throw because although I kind of feel like it might be a finesse, but I feel like if you're picking between Jones and Drew Lock would be the closest one to give you that type of throw.
Definitely.
And develop into it.
He's got the mentality to go for it.
It's just both of these quarterbacks, the thing that it is with them, and of course drafting is not 100%, like it's a little bit of luck into it. These are both quarterbacks that A, I don't think start year 1. B, it's all about not what you see now, but all right, what I'm seeing now, can I fix this? And can I develop him into what I want him to be?
And to me, Daniel Jones, I don't see probably ever playing a game in the NFL. I really don't think he will.
Now, the thing I will say about him, his height is good. Like a 6'5" quarterback.
Sure.
Like he's got, like usually you want taller quarterbacks. However, you look at Drew Brees and he just goes, yeah, Ricky.
And a lot of
give
teams
right
have
here.
drafted tall quarterbacks and it hasn't.
They haven't panned out.
They haven't played it anywhere. But Drew Lock to me, Daniel Jones, I don't see ever really playing anything. Drew Lock to me is that guy who I could see him being a Ryan Tannehill type of guy, a Russell Wilson. Wait before you yell at me. Let me finish my comparison.
Talking to
type
me or
of quarterback,
talking to them?
talking to the world.
Okay.
Let me finish before you get mad at me for calling him Russell Wilson.
I'm like, I don't think I opened
the
my mouth,
guy
Mark.
who goes out there, nobody expects him to play. He beats all the competition in camp, and the excitement is there, so they let him play. For Russell Wilson, works out really well. You can win a Super Bowl. You can go to another one. For Ryan Tannehill, we're talking about what team's going to get him after he gets cut from his current team. So maybe that doesn't work out as well. But yeah, to me, he's one of those guys where if there's no like incumbent starter right now, he will probably win that job and he will probably start early.
Well, and the thing that anything I look at on Drew Lock, it's important to say that, like, obviously it's like, oh, his best trait is this. Oh, its worst trait is this. Everything I see so far, red flag, none. To where there's nothing that makes you go,
For Drew Lock?
he's a guy, yeah. That it's like
His footwork.
It's like, well, oh, he's got a, like, yes, it's not great. He needs to work on it, but it's not a red flag. And like what I'm saying like that is the reason why I think I'm seeing a lot of none is that people are looking at it and going, yes, he needs to work on this, but it's not impossible. It's not like, oh, this is going to be a lost cause to get him to work on it. And that to me is super important because if either of these guys are going to pan out in the NFL, it's going to come down to how coachable are they.
Oh, for sure. Both these guys have things that need to be worked on for sure. And yeah, I just don't really see much of anything panning out for Daniel Jones. Maybe I'll be completely wrong on that one. I'm not saying that that Drew Lock is going to be anything special in the NFL. He just is more likely. You know, he's got less things to work on. He's got more fixable things like, the guy stares down his receivers. Okay. A lot of quarterbacks coming out of college do that.
Yeah, because
you can work on it.
Because in college, they're not really going through progressions.
Yeah.
It's really just of like,
this is the play,
there's a receiver,
there's
a receiver. Like,
exactly. Yep.
It's like, this is where it's going to be. I'm going to go to that.
So I think that Drew Lock could maybe go in the first round to answer the original question. I still am not convinced about either one of them going, though.
Well, and the thing, too, that throws into it, and this is the last thing I'll throw in right at the end, that makes this, to me, this is not a quarterback class that we had last year. However, the thing that makes this quarterback class even more difficult than last year is we might not have a ton of first-round picks, but we might have a lot of second and beyond picks to where, like, two guys that we didn't mention that I'll throw out there, Will Greer, a guy that Brandon really likes, that coming also from one of those kind of spread offenses in the Big 12 where he can sling it, but his mechanics aren't the best. I mentioned how he's got a little bit of a Tim Tebow act thing going on where he does a little circular motion. Like when Brandon and I talked about him, I said, if I'm an NFL safety, if I'm in an NFL corner, basically if I'm Stephen Gilmore in the Super Bowl, I see him cock that arm back and I'm licking my chops like a dog looking at that steak because I'm going to pick it off 9 times out of 10. And the other one is Jarrett Stidham. He's another guy that had a good week at the Senior Bowl. And those are two guys that could be drafted after Locke, after Daniel Jones, and can still pan out, but not be first-round guys. And that's why this year we have quarterbacks. It's just vastly different. Last year it was, here's our 5. They're all going to go in the first round. Where this year it's, well, these two will be first-round picks probably. Kyler Murray, if he ever shits or get off the pot. But that's like the other one. It's like, all right, they're not terrible.
Yep.
It's just where in this draft
but then
are they
the
going to go?
theory, of course, becomes that next year we're supposed to have even more quarterbacks. So some of these guys that go in a second, third, fourth round might get forgotten about if that team's bad again and they just take another quarterback.
Exactly. Like, if any of these guys go to Miami, good luck, because Tua might be there next year. And if Miami does get, I'm not saying like for sure they're going to, if Miami gets Tua next year, I don't care who they draft this year. Tua Tagovailoa is going to be the starter of that Miami, basically of any team that takes him
we'll see what
at
happens.
number one. Like, if he is the number one pick. To go. Like, and that's the thing where we do have next year to go. We have the other year to go for even Trevor Lawrence. Like after that Clemson Alabama game, everyone was all over like, oh my God, I can't wait for the 2021 draft because I can't wait to see what Trevor Lawrence can do in the NFL. So, I mean,
People
we got
need
a lot to go for this. Any final thoughts on these quarterbacks before we close out the podcast?
Final thoughts, people need to be patient.
People just need to be patient. But just to give you guys a little update on our NFL kind of draft schedule here for MVP this week, be on the lookout for our primetime podcast, our big board. Brandon and I will be recording that tomorrow on Tuesday. So look out for that big board, number 3 for the NFL draft. Our next mock draft, Mark, our order is solidified. That's the word that I was trying to say out of my mouth. We'll be recording that on the 19th of February. So in 2 weeks, we'll be recording our 4.0 mock draft, and that'll be fun because that'll be right around, if I'm not mistaken, that's right around where players are going to be franchise tags. So hopefully we get a ton of tags on that day that kind of just go out and we can kind of use that to where guys are going to go. But let us know what you guys think about Drew Lock, about Daniel Jones, even about like a Will Greer or Jarrett Stidham, basically anyone besides Kyler Murray, besides Dwayne Haskins, because it's kind of clear they are the two top dogs in this quarterback race. Let us know what you think about them down below. Also, make sure, like I've mentioned before, please support us on patreon.com/mostvaluablepodcast. The only way we can continue doing what we do each and every week for you guys is the support that we get from our patrons. I want to thank every single one of them for supporting us. $10 tier, you get to join a podcast each and every month. You are at that tier. You can also check us out on Twitter at the Mark Weber, at Ricky Widmer, at Most Valuable Pod, and make sure to rate and review the podcast on iTunes, and Apple Podcasts. Please give us that 5-star rating. I want to thank you guys for watching us on YouTube. I want to thank you guys for listening on podcast services around the world. And as always, have a good day, everybody.